Hi there, my name is Rachel, and today I have for you a brief review of a dual brush pen set that I purchased recently from Amazon. It was on a really good sale. Well, this is obviously by Soucolor, and they do a nice budget brand of colored pencil, and these are water-based marker pens that have a brush tip on one side and a fine liner tip on the other side. So let's just have a look at these. Now, they come in this really nice case. I really like the cases that have these elastic bangs. I use these for my pencils especially, but keeping the markers like this, it's easier than keeping them in some of those other upright ones where they kind of jumble around, the colors get all mixed up. I like to be able to keep my my markers in the exact order of the colors I want them to be in. So I really like this case. 72 pens, and the case opens out like that, so it holds all the colors very nicely. The pens, they come with some replacement nibs, so you've got some of the marker fine liner nibs, and then some of the the fine liner nibs, and then the marker brush tip nibs. Just a couple replacements for those if you happen to fray them or they get damaged over time. Also comes with this little coloring book sample, which is kind of nice. It's got a number of different styles in there just to test out your markers on. Now they are double-sided, and this paper is it's smooth, and it's a little bit thicker than, like, say, the Amazon paper. So I did test out if they would bleed through, and if you are here, if you're a little bit heavy on the layers like I am, you can see it does kind of bleed through in this little book. So I would use these on single-sided pages. And like I said, this is even a thicker sheet. It's not a cardstock, but it's still a thicker sheet. As you can see, I use a lot of layers. So it did bleed through. Now, if you're the kind of person that you only do like one layer, really, you'd probably be fine in a book like this, where it's not going to bleed through as much. But if you like to do a lot of color depth, then you probably want to pick a single-sided book to color in. Also comes with a little test sheet, so you can test out your colors ahead of time. I do like to do swatches of my colors. I tend to keep them in a separate book, and I have not swatched these pencils or these pens yet to get them. I like to see which ones are the darks and which ones are the pales, so that I can use them as I need to. I tend to use the paler pigments first for undercoloring under pencils, other things like that, and then use the darks. And I did find that the darks in this one got quite dark kind of quite quickly. So one thing I did notice was that the markers don't always match the color that you see on the outside of the marker, which means you really do want to test them before you start coloring, because one of these was like, this one was like a cream, and I think when I tested it, this is a piece of cardstock I have here, when I tested it, came out very yellow. So you see, the color is not I wouldn't really call that a match. You know, if you're going for a cream, you don't want a yellow. These are a water-based marker, so you will notice that if you use them to color in an area, they will leave the streaks as you color over them, which the alcohol markers blend a little bit nicer. However, if you know that the water base are going to do this, then you can use that to your advantage by deliberately creating patterns and textures with it in that manner. And the fine liners color very nicely, as you can see. They make nice lines. Not quite as crisp as some fine liners, but they certainly do their job, and it's nice that they match then the colors exactly. I did find that if I used the fine liner over where there had been marker, that the color did bleed. So it will bleed You won't get quite as crisp line or dots if you do it over already colored areas. And maybe if you let it dry a little bit. I think when I was doing it, I was just kind of going along, and I did notice there was a little bleeding. That can soften the look, though. So again, as long as you know what to expect, you can use that to your advantage to get the effects that you want. So all in all, these are they are a budget priced pen, but they come with the two. They come with the two tips. They come with the nice packaging. And let me just show you here. I did a sample coloring in this book. This is what I did with these pens. Now I did several layers, and I used, like I said, I used some of the lighter undertones, and then I would layer the darker colors on top. And I did notice with even, say, the first layer of some of these colors that I was getting a little bit of that paper roughening due to it being very wet. I found these markers to be very, very wet as far as water-based markers. Now, I don't tend to use a lot of markers, and the markers I have used are alcohol-based, so they may be the same as other water-based markers, and I just am not as familiar with them. But now I use several layers, and as you can see, definitely use a piece of cardstock underneath, and it only bled through the whole page a little bit, but as you can see, it definitely bled through the page. Now this is an Amazon printed book, so you would definitely want to go with a single-sided book if you're going to be coloring in the book with these, because as you can see, it bleeds through quite a lot for a water-based marker. And like I said, it did rough up the page a bit, and it also, I don't know if you can see, but it rumpled the pages too from the dampness, the wetness of it. So it's just something to be aware of if you are using water-based markers to do artwork like this, especially if you're doing several layers. Now they did layer very nicely, and I did a mixture of trying to do a solid fill as well as doing some specifically like hatched, I guess you'd say, hatched or line art. And then also I did quick stippling. I was doing this kind of quickly. I didn't want to take a lot of time, and I personally get a lot of hand cramps from coloring, and so I wasn't being super careful with this. So this was just a kind of a quick job run out just to see how the markers would perform. So if I took the point is, if I took the time, I could probably get a much neater, nicer looking picture. But it wasn't bad. If you just want to like spend the time doodling, however, as you can see, you can get some different effects. Maybe not go quite as dark. I might go lighter the next time, because this did come out to be quite dark. But like I said, I hadn't swatched my pens first, so I just kind of grabbed a pen and was like, oh, that one's a little darker than I was expecting. They layered actually very nicely. I didn't have any problems with the layering, and like I said, the paper was wet. It was wet from the first layer anyway, and I did let it dry a little bit in between. So those are some of the issues you'll find with this. But as far as a budget marker set goes, it's really nice to have the brush tip, which I personally like the brush tip. You can get a lot of variance between thick lines and thin lines. It's very smooth. The chisel tips to me are a little bit too hard, so I don't care for the chisel tip. So I like that it had the brush tip, and I like that it had the matching fine liner. And again, the fine liners, maybe not your high quality fine liners, but for a budget pen set with quite a variety of colors, and the dual tips, it's actually a pretty decent set. So I guess whether or not I would recommend it, I would say if you're the kind of person that likes budget equipment and you don't want to be spending loads of money on getting those fine, those better pen sets, and you're okay with knowing that the quality is not going to be quite up to par with some of those better sets, I'd say go ahead, because I know with markers especially, they can run out. fairly quickly, depending on how you use them. So unlike colored pencils, where you get a 72 set of colored pencils, you're going to have those, you know, for a lot of pictures, whereas the markers have a limited life. Either you use them all the time and they get used up quickly, or you let them sit and they dry out over time anyway. So depending on how much of a marker artist you are, you might not want to invest in a super expensive set. And like I said, this set was really cheap. It's actually had a special on it when I got it. And then it's got this case, which after you use up all the markers, you can put another marker set in, or you can put a pencil set in. So even when you have used up the markers, you still have something left over. So I would definitely recommend this for people who want a budget pen set, especially if you're just kind of exploring around with using markers and you're not a big marker person, or if you're the kind of person that you just like to do those one single layers of marker, and you don't want to do a lot of detail, and you don't want to get the alcohol markers, which tend to be more. I'd say this is a fine set for those kinds of people. Now, if you are the kind of person who wants a really nice artwork, you probably don't want to be going with the more budget set, because like I said, the sharpness of the fine liner is not quite up to scratch, and the colors they're, like I said, they're very wet, and they do kind of bleed through, and they do kind of chunk up that paper. So just a few things to think about. If you were curious, you saw this on Amazon and you were curious how they worked, this is just a simple review for them. So hope this has been helpful for anyone who has been considering, or who would like to consider buying these brushes. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.